All right, everybody, what's happening? And welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk. Of course, this is the show that we cover the swag inside and out. And I am your tour guide around the swag Seawells coming at you. And we got another swag season preview, man. Got three more to go after this. Finally making it on through. Today we're gonna talk about the Prairie Panthers. So we're gonna take a trip to Texas and talk about the Panthers. They are the defending West Division champs. And I've been calling this team an enigma for a while, but I don't really think they are an enigma, man. I think if you look closely, you're gonna be surprised at some of the things that are possible for this team. So before we get started, as usual, you can check out the socials on the screen. Facebook is Swag Talk, Instagram Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76. So check those out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share them, and feel free to comment and hit that notification bell because we working on a bunch of different things, man. I'm gonna be doing some swag power rankings through the season, 1 through 12 of all teams. Probably start that up next week or so, and I'm gonna do a HBCU top 10. So that'll be coming in the next couple weeks. So check out the hit that notification bell so you can be alerted when I drop those kind of videos and whatever else comes down the pipe, man. We got a lot of stuff going on as usual. Wednesday is our Southern preview. Sunday is our Texas Southern preview, and probably Monday or Tuesday will be our of the following week will be our UAPB preview, and then there we'll have our week 0 preview on Wednesday. Because the first 2 games of the SWAC season are on August 27th. So got a lot going on. Of course, in the meantime, between time, we got SWAC Smoke live 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's every Thursday. So we got that popping as well. So just make sure you stay tuned in and check everything out. So let's just go ahead and talk PV, man. Let's talk some Panthers. And like I said, this team finished 7-5 last season, won the West Division with a 6-2 record. Had a really tough game against Jackson State in the championship game, but they came up on the short end of the stick. Unfortunately they finished the season on a 4-game losing streak. They were 7-1 going into the end of the season. So where they could have been, if they would have won those games, the record would have been a lot better. I mean, really, 2 out of the 4 games that they lost, they probably should have won. So they could have easily, had a 9-3 record. I mean, it's still, a division championship. Could have finished undefeated in the division because they lost their last 2 conference games. So, not much different as far as on the as the results, but aesthetically, the record could have looked even better if they would have found a way to not finish on that 4-game losing streak. But let's look at their schedule from last season, and we'll break it down and look at the stats from last season, and then we'll jump into this season. They opened up the season with a 40-17 victory over Texas Southern in the Labor Day Classic. They lost to Incarnate Word 40-9. They beat Houston Baptist 37-27. They beat Grambling 24-10. They beat Pine Bluff 27-17. They beat Bethune-Cookman 35-29. They beat Southern 48-21. They beat Alabama State 24-20. So after losing to Incarnate Word, they ripped off six games in a row. They were on a 6-game winning streak. Pretty firm control of the division, and then they went to Alcorn and dropped a 31-29 decision. 52-3 loss to Texas A&M. They lost to Valley 24-19 the following week. After that game, they lost. They just couldn't get past the Delta Devils, and they headed into the SWAC championship with a dropping a 27-10 game to Jackson State. So not only did they lose that game and miss out on the chance to go to Celebration Bowl, they lost their head coach, Coach Eric Dooley. We all know ultimately ended up going to Southern, and that leads them to having a new coach coming into this season. So we'll talk about what Coach McDowell has up his sleeve for the Panthers. But let's look at some of the numbers from last season. The Panthers were 7th in the league in scoring offense at 25.4 points per game. Scoring defense, they were 4th in the league at 26.3 points per game. Total offense, they were third in the league at 385.6 yards per game. They averaged 5.6 yards per play, which would put them at third in the league in that category. So they're really good offensive attack. They were third in the league in total defense at 309 yards per game. They allowed an average of 4.7 yards per play, which would have been a number 3 as far as the fewest yards per play allowed as a defense. So again, the defense was very, very good last year. Offensively, they were pretty solid. They were third in the league in rushing offense at 161.2 yards per game. So, a lot of people always thought Prairie didn't really run the ball a lot, but they actually ran the ball quite often. They ran the ball 471 times last season, which was the most. I mean, that was more than Southern. And Southern's a team that people know as a running team. Prairie View ran the ball almost 20 times more than Southern did. Although they did have an extra game in there, but they still had more attempts than Southern did. So this is a team that really wanted to run the football, and they did it really well. Like I said, averaging 4.1 yards per carry and 161 yards per game. Defensively, they were fourth in the league in rushing defense at 135.8 yards per play, and 3.7 yards per carry, which was the third fewest yards per carry for an opponent in the league. Passing offense, they were fifth in the league, 224 yards per game, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 59% completion rate. Defensively, they were second in the league in passing defense, allowing 173.5 yards per game. They allowed the opponents to complete 52% of their passes, which was the third fewest in the league. 19 touchdowns and 10 interceptions on the season. Kickoff returns, they were 11th in the league in kickoff returns, averaging 16.2 yards per return. And punt returns, they were 8th in the league, averaging 6.7 yards per return. So not a great return game for them. That's probably one of the few things that just did not really stand out this past season. Kickoffs, they averaged 36.6 net yards per kick and 54 total yards per kick. 12 touchbacks on the season. Field goals, they were second in the league at 13 of 15 for 86%. Extra points, they were ninth in the league, 32 of 35 for 91%. Punting, they were 11th in the league at 30.5 yards per kick net. They allowed 7.8 yards per punt return, which was the most in the league. So that the coverage unit was just not really good. They averaged 39.8 yards per kick total. So not, special teams were kind of hit or miss for them. And, honestly, this past season, it didn't really make a huge difference other than the Jackson State game. And they allowed a huge kickoff return for a touchdown. They kind of, broke the game open. So, they struggled with coverage, but, it didn't really hurt them too often during the season. The offensive line allowed 20 sacks on the season, which is the number 4. That's the 4th fewest in the league. Defensively, they registered 27 sacks, which was also 4th. So they did a good job of protecting the quarterback and getting pressure on the quarterback. And they were 5th in the league with 10 interceptions, actually tied for 4th in the league with 10 interceptions. First downs, they averaged 18.9 first downs per game, putting them at sixth place. Defensively, the opponents averaged 17.5 first downs, which was 4th. Third down conversions, they were 7th in the league at 68 of 179 for 38%. Defensively, they were 2nd in the league in third down conversion rate, only allowing 30% third down conversions, 47 of 156. So defensively, they did a really, really good job of getting the ball back for the offense. Offense was average in terms of, being able to convert third downs, but defensively, they did a damn good job of getting the ball back for their offense. Fourth down conversions per view was 16 or 29 for 55%, which is good for 4th place. They went for it 29 times, as I said, which would be the 2nd most in the league. So they gambled a bit quite often. They weren't afraid to go for it on 4th down, and they were pretty successful with it. Fourth down conversions for the opponents, they were 10th in the league at 54%, 17 or 31. So that was the one spot that, if the offense couldn't get the third down, then about half the time they got the fourth down when they attempted it. So they kind of was struggling at that point, but that all in all, the defense was very, very good last season. Penalties, they were the least penalized team this past season, yardage per game wise, at 45.2 yards per game, and the lowest in total yards at 542, and they were the second lowest in total penalties at 59. And if looking back, in Coach Dooley's first couple years at Prairie, they were highly penalized teams. I'm talking over 100 penalties in a season, almost 100 penalty yards per game. And to reduce that to this number, that was great discipline on this team. This team was all about business and taking care of business. And I thought they did a really good job of just really decreasing those penalties and keeping themselves out of bad positions on offense and defense. The opponents were penalized for Prairie View 57 times for 549 yards. 549 yards, 45.8 yard per game average, which was 11th. So a Prairie View game didn't have a lot of penalties. Honestly, both teams combined for about 90 yards of penalties. So not a crazy amount of penalties in their games. On red zone offense, Prairie View was fifth, 32 of 42 for 76%. They had 19 touchdowns, 17 rushing, and only 2 passing touchdowns. So, they ran the ball really effectively in the red zone. They were 13 of 14 on field goals in the red zone. Those 14 field goals were the most attempted in the league last season in the red zone. They had 4 fumbles, 1 interception, and 3 turnovers on downs, which gives them 8 turnovers in the red zone. So, that's where they came up short at, not really being really, really efficient with the ball. Defensively, they were 7th in the league in red zone defense, 34-40 for 85%, 27 touchdowns for their opponents, 17 rushing, 10 passing, and they were 7 of 9 on field goals. And they had one fumble, 2 interceptions, and 1 turnover on downs. So 4 turnovers in the red zone for the opponents. Prairie View average time of possession was 31 minutes and 36 seconds on the season. Looking at some of the individual guys who were the team leaders, Jaden Stewart was the leading rusher at 132 carries for 651 yards. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry and 7 touchdowns. Then Damian Brooks had a really good season for Grambling. He came from Grambling, and he had a really good season for Prairie View. I'm so used to saying his name with Grambling, it just rolled right off the tongue. 81 carries for him, 464 yards, 5.7 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. He did have an 83-yard run on the season. Jawan passed 88 carries, 271 yards, 3.1 yard per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Christian Mosley, 47 carries, 209 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. And then Ahmad Antoine had 44 carries for 172 yards, 3.9 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. Passing, Jawan passed 203 completions, 330 attempts, 16 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 61% completion rate, 2,672 yards. Suzanne Connolly, 6 of 20, no touchdowns, 1 interception, completed 30% of his passes, 55 yards on the season. And Ty Holden was 1 for 1 for 35 yards and a touchdown. Receiving, Antonio Mullins, 46 catches, 584 yards. He averaged 12.7 yards per catch and 3 touchdowns. Jalen Howard, he missed to take the top off the defense. 25 catches, 543 yards. He averaged 21.7 yards per catch and 5 touchdowns. So obviously, he was a guy that could go deep. Trejon Spiller, also another guy who could go deep. 15 catches, 346 yards. He averaged 23 yards per catch and 4 touchdowns. Then Damian Brooks, 27 catches, 250 yards, 9.2 yards per catch. And Kobe Washington, 18 catches, 244 yards. He averaged 13.5 yards per catch and 1 touchdown. Defensively, Drake Cheatham was the leading tackler on the season with 86. Trishaw Smith, 85. Darius Campbell, 58. Travion Green, 57. Shaheed Reese, 54. Bryce Turner, 54. Tackles for loss. Jason Dumas, who obviously now is at Southern, he had 17 and a half tackles for loss. Rashad Powell, 8.5. Darius Campbell, 8. Troy James, 8. Travion Green, 7.5. Drake Cheatham, 6.5. Jesse Evans, 6.5. Sacks, Dumas, 8.5. James, 4.5. Powell, 4. Green, 3. Evans, 2.5. Shankle, 2. Interceptions. Drake Cheatham had 5 interceptions on the season. Logan Jackson with 2. And they had 3 other guys with 1 apiece. Special teams, Caleb Darbon was the punter. He had 47 kicks for 1,959 yards. He averaged 41.6 yards per kick. Along with 59, he had 4 touchbacks on the season and 8 punts inside the 20, 11 50-plus yard punts. He did get 1 blocked on the season. Prairie actually had 3 kicks blocked on the season, so they, had opponents get through a bit to disrupt their kicking game. Louise Reyes, 13 of 15 on field goals, 86%. 8 of 9 from 20 to 29 yards. 5 of 5 from 30 to 39 yards. 0 for 1 from 40 plus. His long on the season was 37. They only attempted 1 field goal more than 40 yards, so they felt comfortable with him between 20 and 39 yards. Outside of that, they didn't really attempt a field goal. They may have went for it on the 4th down or punted if they were a little bit further out. Kickoffs, Reyes, 64 kicks, 3,483 yards, 54-yard average. He had 13 touchbacks on the season, 3 kicks out of bounds. Not many. I like to see a low out of bounds kick number. That means you not giving the opponent free yardage to the 35. Antonio Mullins, 12-point returns, 74 yards, 6.1 yard per return. Reggie King, 7 returns, 90 yards, 12.8 yards per return. Jalen Howard, 4 returns, 78 yards, 9.5 yards per return. So, like I said, special teams wise, their return game really wasn't anything crazy. This team just, they just put it all together. After their first loss, they put it all together in their 3rd game of the season, and they were able to turn it on and rip off a bunch of wins. Had a close loss to Alcorn. Then the A&M game kind of, wrecked their season, and after that, they ended up, dropping the Prairie game and then the Jackson State game. So let's look at let's look at the schedule for this upcoming season, and then I'll give my thoughts on that and the team afterwards. So let's go ahead and throw this up on the screen, and we'll run through this list of games. So their first game is the Labor Day Classic against Texas Southern. That game has been really built up as a let me go this way. Sorry. This game has been really built up as a big game, man. I'm really eagerly anticipating this game. This game is on September 3rd. It will be on ESPN Plus. So if you can check it out, TSU coming in with a lot of hype this season. Prairie View, a lot of people don't really know what to make of this team. So this could be a very interesting game. Prairie View's on a winning streak in this series right now. So I expect to see a tough matchup here in this game. They then go to Abilene Christian on September 10th. All 3 of their non-conference games are against Texas teams. FCS teams, no FBS teams on the schedule this year. So that that's a good look, and very not crazy travel for them in non-conference. So Abilene Christian is September 10th. Incarnate Word is September 17th. That's a home game for the Panthers. Alabama State, September 24th. That's an interesting game. But Alabama State at this point could be coming into this game, anywhere from probably like 2-1 to 1-2, depending on how, that first game shakes out. And then they have Miles and UCLA before that. So it's, really interesting to see how they come into this game. But this is a big game. It's on the road to be the first road game in conference, and we'll see how this team fares. Um, Very interesting to see how Coach McDowell handles a lot of these situations. He's a first-year coach. As a head coach, he's been a coach for many, many years. So you want to see how this team will handle those ups and downs, and how they respond. After their first game, if they drop their game, how they respond. If they win that game, how they respond. And coming off of a couple of non-conference games before this game. And then October 1st, they play Grambling in the State Fair Classic. Game will be televised, so check that out. Um, finally, this game will be. I think it's part of the HBCU Gold package, which is on most people's CW networks, I believe. So finally, man, this game has been. I've been calling for this game to be televised for years, and they're finally doing it. Prairie View's on a winning streak in this series, but Grambling should be much improved. This is a big game for the West Division because I feel like whoever wins the division probably going to drop a game or two. So this is a big game. And typically this has been like Prairie View before last season. This has been like Prairie View jumping off point. They would beat Grambling and then it would be downhill from there. Last season they were able to beat Grambling and then continue to win games after that. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle this game. Knowing that the following week they play Southern at home, everybody's gonna say, it's just a game, it's no big deal. And for the most part it probably is, but you gotta know that there's gonna be some emotion there. For both sides, Prairie View definitely gonna probably be even more fired up to play against their old coach. How many times does a coach go from one division opponent to the other one and have to play at that school in the first game, his first year? So that's going to be a very emotional game, and I think that could be one of those turning points in the season, depending on how things shake out. They go to Lamar on October 22nd, so October 15th they have a bye week. Then they go to Lamar for a road game, which I think is a very winnable game. Lamar has not been very good since they brought back their football program a few years ago. So this is a game I think Prairie has a good shot in. The other two games, I think they have a decent chance. Incarnate Word lost their all-everything quarterback, so it's going to be interesting. I think they got a transfer guy in, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do. October 29th, they come home and play Bethune-Cookman for homecoming. Bethune-Cookman gave them a goal last season in Daytona, so I'm expecting Bethune-Cookman to be much improved this season. Prairie View, I think they're going to be a pretty good team, looking at some of the things that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So this will be a very good game, but, Prairie View, I think they got a decent shot at home. Then they get Alcorn at home on a Friday, November 4th, ESPNU broadcast. Big game. I'm thinking Alcorn probably is the front runner in the division. Prairie View could be right in the mix. If things fall their way, they could be right in the mix. Their schedule is not super hard in non-conference, and we'll in the cross division matchups, and we'll go over that in a second. November 12th, they go to Pine Bluff, and that's going to be a game. That can be a trap game. We don't know what to make of Pine Bluff right now. We don't know what position Prairie View could be in at this point. This could be a game that they need to navigate to get to the SWAC championship, or this could be a game that they need a dub just to have a good season. And so, they need to come out and take care of business. But this should be an interesting game in late November. And they close out their season on November 19th at Valley in Itabena. So, that's a tough matchup. Everybody is really high on Valley, me included, this season. So, I really feel like it's tough to play in Valley. So, you have things to close out. Trying to wrap a division title or maintain a lead, that's a tough place to end your season. So, things could go left in a second playing on the road at Valley in the end of the season. Who knows what the weather going to be like? Probably maybe windy as hell up there. All kind of, crazy things happen there. So, hope, if you're a Prairie View fan, you want to hope that you got things locked up before you get to Valley because you just never know. But looking at their schedule, man, I like this schedule as a conference schedule. You don't have either one of the heavyweights in the East Division on your schedule. That's number one, so you don't have to worry about that. You got Alabama State, who, could be good or could be average. You got Bethune-Cookman, who could be, same thing. And Valley. I mean, Valley is improving, but, they're still a wild card. So they don't have any necessarily mark it down as a loss type of game on the east side. So that helps a lot. They get Southern and Alcorn at home and Texas Southern. So three of the toughest division games are at home. Gramblin's a neutral site, so they only got one road game in the division, and that's Pine Bluff, which is definitely a winnable game. This schedule shapes up very well for them in conference. Non-conference wise, I had to research these teams a little bit more, but none of these games are like very, very. I don't think any of these games would be heavy underdogs for Prairie View. They may be underdog in these games to a slight degree, but I think these games are all manageable. I think this whole schedule is manageable, and I'm gonna tell you why now before I get into my my record prediction. The reason why I feel like this team and this schedule is very manageable, and I think this team can have a season a lot better than people think. Me included, a few days ago, hell, a few hours ago, before I went on the air. This team returns 8 starters on offense and 8 starters on defense. This is a very experienced team. They return all 5 starting offensive linemen. That's huge. Technically, they lost Damian Brooks, who was the starting running back, but Jaden Stewart was the leading rusher. So they returned their leading rusher, who obviously got a lot of carries, over 120 carries on the season. So he's tested. The receiving core is deep. They returned 8 guys who played a lot, including Trajan Spiller and Jalen Howard, who were both deep threats, along with the tight end Donovan White. So they returned a gang of guys at receiver. Xavier Johnson is back from an injury last season. So they have like 16 guys that they could throw out there. That's depth. But they have some guys who have started all season, and they have the guys to do it. The running game will be spearheaded by Jaden Stewart. I expect a really big season out of him this year. The offensive line, like I said, they return pretty much everybody, so they're going to be solid. That's an offensive line that was third in the league, and that led a rushing attack that was third in the league. The question on offense is obviously quarterback. Jawan Pass wasn't spectacular, but he made plays when he needed to. He kind of fell back into some bad habits in tough situations, but that was a guy that could make those plays for you. Suzanne Connolly is a guy who's been in the program since 2018, so he knows the school. He knows the team. He knows all of that, but he hasn't really had a lot of playing experience. His most extensive action came in the spring of 2021, and that offense was up and down because they were ravaged by COVID most of that season. So that's the biggest question mark. Connolly is the starter as far as we're going from this point on. Chris Scott, who came from Alabama State, he saw a little bit of action last season, not much. Chris Heron's another guy who's going to challenge for that role, but it's Connolly's job right now. So, he's a guy, he can run the ball, he's a good runner, and, he can be an accurate passer if he can get his attempts, so, but that's going to be the key, is getting that chemistry between your quarterback and your receivers. But you have a running game and an offensive line that can stabilize you through this early portion of the season. Like I said, defensively, they returned 8 starters. Now, they took some big losses on defense. Obviously, they lost 2 huge names to the portal, and that's gonna hurt. But that defensive line is still very experienced. They're still very, very solid. They're gonna still be a problem. You're not gonna they return, like I said, they return a lot of guys on their defensive line, and they're gonna get after you. Troy James is still a monster on that defense. 43 tackles on the season, 8 tackles for loss, and an interception. So, he's a guy that's going to be there. Jesse Evans came on strong last season as a young guy. He's only a sophomore. He's going to be getting a lot more playing time. they have these guys on that defensive line that are just definitely going to be ready. Linebacker is solid. Travion Green is the leading tackler on that unit. They're going to be tough. Their secondary is going to be. They lost two big guys in the secondary, but they still have some guys who can make some plays in that secondary. Like I said, they're returning their whole special teams unit. Both the kicker and punter coming back. So this team is more experienced than some people may give them credit for. Like I said, if you look at the losses that they took, yes, they lost some big names, but there's still a lot of good guys there, and they won last year. So they didn't forget how to win because these guys left. The question mark besides quarterback is obviously going to be on the sidelines, and I'm not saying that Coach McDowell is not a good coach or he can't be a good coach. But, you always have to have, those kind of trepidations coming into a season on a coach that hasn't ran a program at this point. And, he's been an interim coach for a couple of times, but, because he's been in Prairie for a long time. But this is, we'll see how he handles some things. But like I said, the schedule shapes up very well. The team is a lot more experienced than a lot of people think, me included. I kind of shuffled them down to the bottom, and didn't really think about them. But, they're going to challenge for the division if the quarterback play can step up. Obviously with a good running game, that can take you so far, but you're going to have to be able to keep defenses honest with the pass and attack, and you're going to want to take advantage of those weapons that you have on the outside. So if the quarterback play is good, I think this team can be a division contender. The quarterback play is average. They're probably going to beat average as a team. So, like I said, looking at the schedule, there are no 100% losses. And there also are no, I'm not going to say 100%, but there are no games that I would give them a less than a 75% chance of winning. So they have a less than 25% chance of winning. Let me put it that way. They don't have any games where I feel like they are so decidedly underdog, at least this point on the season on paper, but they also don't have any games where they are, a 75% winner or better to me. So a lot of talk, pretty much every game on this schedule is a potential toss-up game because I don't feel like, there's nobody that they're head and shoulders better than, and I don't feel like there's nobody on the schedule that's head and shoulders better than them. So I would say this team is going to be a team that is going to challenge for the division. I think the key, those key games for them are Grambling. Well, really Texas Southern, Grambling, Southern, and Alcorn. Those are the biggest games on the season to me in conference. If you can navigate those games, if you can find a way to win all those games, then you're gonna win the division. Obviously, if you struggle in those 4 games, then you're gonna finish low in the division. So I feel like this is probably a team that's gonna split those games, probably 2-2. So that gives you probably a 6-2 record, which still, the way I look at the West Division right now, 6-2 could probably, win the division for you again. It won it for you last season. So I think that I'm gonna give this team a record, a low record of 5-6 as their floor, and I'm gonna say the ceiling is like 8-3. I think, I think they will drop some games because I just, especially early, I think, if you're going to get them, I think you're going to have to get them early while they're still adjusting with quarterback play. But I would say like a 7-4 record. That would probably be my prediction at this point. But, this team can finish high, or, they can, if things don't really go the way they want, they could finish, really middle of the pack. But I don't see the team finishing really anywhere lower than 3rd or 4th in the division. So a lot of room for movement for this team. But I think this team is going to be a lot better than some, than a lot of us think. Me included. Like I said, I didn't really get this team very much credit for anything, because they took some big losses, but they returned a lot of guys. So I would expect this team to be a contender. And like I said, the schedule is very manageable. So, they don't have, only one real long road, well, 2 long road trips, but they're spaced out. Most of the games are in Texas, so not a lot of travel there. So the schedule shapes out well. The team returns, like I said, 16 starters. So the experience is there. Quarterback play, head coaching, are the question marks. And I'm not saying question marks as in they're going to be bad, but those are the two things, the two places that I have to look at this point before I say that this team is a championship team. Those things could be solved really quickly. So if they work those kinks out, I'm like hedging so much, but I'm not saying Coach McDowell is not a good coach. He can't be a good coach. I'm not saying he's gonna struggle either, but I'm just I learned some good lessons after last season about some coaches that took over a team that was very experienced and they weren't experienced as head coaches. So I'm a little bit cautious about that, but I like this team a lot. Looking at them on paper, I like them a lot. I think that they are gonna surprise us as a whole. So that's gonna do it for this preview. Like I said, I'm predicting Prairie to finish 7-4, maybe 8-3. Yeah. Possible division champs, definitely gonna be in the hunt. So that's gonna do it for today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday with our Southern preview, followed by Swag Smoke on Thursday, live 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday, Texas Southern preview, and then probably Monday or Tuesday the following week, we'll have our UAPB preview, and that'll wrap up our 12-team conference preview. So making it on through, man. Got 3 more left, and I thank y'all for joining me on this ride. And I'll catch y'all on Wednesday. So y'all have a good weekend, and we'll holler at y'all then. Peace.